Hello, everybody. This is Catholic Dad, episode number 250. Bill Dudley of the Federal Reserve just revealed his cards. I don't know if everybody knows what the Federal Reserve is, but the Federal Reserve was brought in to existence in 1913 by the Federal Reserve Act. Essentially, we used to have gold and silver as the only payable currency in the United States of America. And then in 1913, centralized banking was brought into existence. The founding fathers of the United States, it should be mentioned, were vehemently opposed to central banking because they thought it was a machine for war, and they thought it was a machine for creating too many foreign alliances and manipulation of government by bankers themselves. And so the founding fathers wrote into, I believe, Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution that only gold and silver will be payable for debts within the United States of America. And the Gold Act of 1792, that if anybody created any counterfeit currency, that the penalty was death. So the founding fathers wanted a stable, strong currency, and they wanted a stable, strong currency because it is the greatest defense of liberty and freedom that you'll ever have, and it's something that the government has a difficult time manipulating, and the people in government that become the manipulators have a difficult time in like using to their advantage by taking over the public treasury and using the labors of the citizens for whatever their despot purposes are. Well, anyway, so the founding fathers were very much anti-central banking. In America, for a really long time, we had a small central bank back during the Civil War to fund war, right? I mean, that's what happens. We got rid of it, and then we didn't have a central bank from essentially the Civil War into 1913. And then the Federal Reserve Act was created, and the Federal Reserve Act essentially put the central bankers, whoever they were, right? They're the Federal Reserve. They're not federal at all, like they're private bankers, and they're responsible for issuing the currency of the United States of America. And we used to have a gold-backed currency until Nixon took us off. I believe it was August 16th, 1971. I believe that's what it was. And even then, it didn't stop the central bankers from 1913 on from expanding massive amounts of currency or contracting massive amounts of currency. I mean, they gave us the Great Depression. They gave us the Great Contraction of 1920 after World War I. And well, anyway, the Federal Reserve is a cabal of bankers. It's a bunch of people that issues currency however they want to, willy-nilly. They're not elected by anybody. They are appointed by the President of the United States of America, but they are not elected, and they really are unaccountable to pretty much everybody once in office. And the Federal Reserve sets interest rates, they set the amount of money supply we have, and they set the price of money. Now, if you wanted a secret ability to control world government, if you wanted a secret ability to control the labors of an entire nation, you wouldn't want to control the laws, you wouldn't want to control the legislative branch or the executive branch or the judiciary. The one thing you could do is just control the price of money, which is what the central bankers do. This is what the Federal Reserve System does. And the central bankers have always held the position that we need to be independent from government because we don't want the price of money being manipulated by politicians to get their way. We want these independent bankers that are completely virtuous and wholehearted and like good for the nation to set the price of money because we don't want politics getting into the price of money. That's what the central bankers' main argument is. Well, anyway, so I don't know if everybody saw what happened this week. Bill Dudley, a former Federal Reserve Board member, essentially encouraged Powell, who's now the Federal Reserve Chair, that perhaps you should use Federal Reserve policy to take out Donald Trump because he's going against their interests of free trade. And that, like, when he creates this trade war, the Federal Reserve is the one that's having to buffer all the downside of the trade war, and that because of that, maybe we should use the Federal Reserve monetary policy to take out the President of the United States of America. This is exactly the reason, no joke, this is exactly the reason why the founding fathers did not want central bankers, because the central bankers tend to be globalists. The founding fathers were nationalists. Globalists, they always want free trade. Nationalists always want tariff systems. It's the way it works. The founding fathers essentially funded the United States government for say 100 and I don't know until 140 years with only tariff systems. Like tariffs were the only way that the federal government actually existed. And that was good for America. You could see how America exploded from its creation all the way to the early 1900s, that it was really the giant on the hill. It was the nation that kind of stole industry from the rest of the world, not stole, created industry, and kind of outcompeted everybody else because its policy was very sound. It was Hamiltonian economics. It was that we create like a very free market, a market within our own land, and that foreign interests who may be more despot or may be tyrannical, they have to actually compete for a share in our marketplace, and by competing they have to pay an entry fee, and that's called a tariff. That's why America was made great. That's why Bismarck's Germany rose. That's why Adam Smith England rose to become a giant of industry. Any nation that like follows Hamiltonian economics, any nation that tariffs foreign imports, they usually tend to rise to an economic giant as long as they keep trade within their borders free. America is no exception to that. America is probably the greatest example of how the tariff system could make America, or can make a country great. Well, anyway, so the nationalists are essentially bankers, and they want free trade. They don't like the economic nationalism. They don't like the tariff systems. They want, and really they're loyal to whoever will make them money. They're not loyal to any country. They don't really care about a land or a country or whatever else. And this has always been the complaint of the central bank, that the America, a country with great national sovereignty, was essentially taken over by an international cabal of bankers that were going to push their country into internationalism or globalism. And frankly, if you look at the last 100+ years in the history of the United States of America, that's essentially what happened. We went from a nation that didn't want to get involved in foreign affairs to getting involved in every single foreign affair on the globe. And oh, by the way, we're funding every single like military arms deal or military industrial complex, you name it. We have our country under the control of multiple internationals. We have alliances coming out of every orifice of our body. And we can no longer stand up for the people in America. And by the way, this is why Donald Trump was elected, because he promised to essentially scale back on the globalism and increase the nationalism, and that appealed to a whole bunch of people in the deindustrialized Midwest in New York and the whole East Coast. And they essentially said, yeah, we kind of want our jobs back. And so, well, anyway, Bill Dudley put everything to the carpet. And he told Powell, like, the one thing you're not supposed to admit as a central banker, that you can actually drive political policy, that maybe it's time to use Federal Reserve policy to take out the President of the United States of America, to drive the conversation away from nationalism more towards globalism and free trade. We want to take this sucker down called the United States of America. That's what Bill Dudley essentially said. And how can he do that? By fixing the price of money. Now, I'll give an example, by the way. Barack Obama was elected, and he inherited a massive recession. He did. What did the Federal Reserve do? Well, it gave him 8 years of free money, 0% interest rates, and anybody who can't make an economy churn on 0% interest rates is a moron. What happened when President Trump got elected? Well, the Federal Reserve started increasing interest rates, and they've done it year over year over year so far. And now is the crucial election year. And Bill Dudley's encouraging Powell to take out the President of the United States of America, and very easily. All they have to do is make the price of money more expensive. The economy is also already teetering on recession based upon the massive amounts of debt that we have, which, by the way, most of it was created long before this president was elected. But all that being said, is the Federal Reserve, if they raise interest rates 200 basis points, 300 basis points, you name it, they could take down the entire global economy by doing that. And Bill Dudley essentially said they knew they could do that. And when you take down an economy, most people are not smart enough to figure out the Federal Reserve did it. And then everybody would be looking at the leadership of the country, particularly the President of the United States of America. So Bill Dudley, thank you, because people like myself who've been studying this for years, over years, have essentially said that the Federal Reserve has to be a political machine, because anybody that sets the price of money can drive the economy in any direction it wants. and it's always filled with people with political interests. So therefore, Bill Dudley, thank you for telling me I was right, and everybody else who goes along in my camp was correct over the course of the last, I don't know, 105 years, whenever the Federal Reserve was created. And so I guess that's all I have to say. Bill Dudley, thank you. The Federal Reserve is what it is. It's a political despot that sets the price of money, and that doesn't need to happen. What we need to get back to is a market economy where the price of money is set by the marketplace itself based upon the level of savings and investments and how much money you have on hand. The more savings you have, the lower the interest rates will go. The less savings and the more debt you have, the higher the interest rates would go. This is we should have really high interest rates today, but we don't because the Federal Reserve artificially sets them, which creates a falsely optimistic, robust economy. And so, yeah, the economy, I suspect, stinks, and it stinks if they wanted to. All they have to do is raise interest rates, and the emperor has no clothes. Suddenly, we'll have a massive default on, rolling defaults on massive amounts of debt, and then you'll have a sudden deflationary trend within the U.S. markets, and suddenly everybody would roll into recession, and nobody would like that. And I think that's what's going to come up. We'll see what Powell does. We'll see how strong the President of the United States of America is, and we'll also see if he has any dirt on these Federal Reserve Board members. He may after this whole Epstein thing. Anyway, this is Catholic Dad. Make you think about it. Please like or subscribe. Get the Mass, pray the Daily Rosary, and share with your friends. And do like or subscribe. God bless you.